much more do I need to say? It would take too long to recount the stories of the faith of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and all the prophets. By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms, ruled with justice, and received what God had promised them. They shut the mouths of lions, quenched the flames of fire, and escaped death by the edge of the sword. Their weakness was turned to strength. They became strong in battle and put whole armies to flight. Women received their loved ones back again from death. But others were tortured, refusing to turn from God in order to be set free. They placed their hope in a better life after the resurrection. Some were jeered at, and their backs were cut open with whips. Others were chained in prisons. Some died by stoning, some were sawed in half, and others were killed with the sword. Some went about wearing skins of sheep and goats, destitute and oppressed and mistreated. They were too good for this world, wandering over deserts and mountains, hiding in caves and holes in the ground. All these people earned a good reputation because of their faith, yet none of them received all that God had promised. For God had something better in mind for us, so that they would not reach perfection without us. This is the word of the Lord.
Sorry. Oh, I've got everyone's attention, including mine. Trinette wanted me to ask the kids too. For a DVD, there's a DVD. But before you go, kids, I've got a little bit of a bit in my story as well. So can I have them first, please, Trinette? Okay, so this was going to be later in the sermon, but seeing as how the kids are going to go out for a DVD, I wanted to do a little bit of a quiz on the flag. On the Australian flag, and I've got to go back to my second page now. On the Australian flag, there are two parts to our flag. Does anyone know what they're called? Oldies, can you help? Okay, I've got a flag here. The Union Jack. Does anyone know the proper name of that part of the flag? Because I want you to realise that on a flag, whether it's the Australian flag, or the American flag, or the Greek flag, or any other flag, I was going to say Fijian because Fiji has a flag very similar to ours, but would have the Union Jack, I believe. However, that top corner has a name. Does anyone know what the name of it is? Think Chinese. No, not Chinese. Not Chinese. Canton. It's called a canton. Where the Union Jack sits is called a canton. And the rest of it is called a field. And that is very important. You see, flags are used to tell stories. In years before they had radios, ships would send messages by different flags. And even today, if you go out onto the harbour or out onto the bay, and you see a ship and it's flying a flag called the Blue Peter, and it's been so long since I've seen or talked about Blue Peters, I forget what it looks like. I think it's blue anyway, and a bit of white. It tells you that there is a diver with scuba gear underneath the boat. It's a message. Flags tell stories. They are designed to convey a message. And so our flag tells a message too. It tells it through its canton, where we've got the Union Jack, and it tells it through the field, where we find the Federation Star and the Southern Cross. Okay. The canton tells us about the government. For example, if you look at an American flag, what's on the American flag, kids? Anyone help me? What's on the American flag in the canton area, in that top corner? What's on an American flag? Yeah, the flag's called Stars and Stripes, but is it stars or stripes? It's stars. How many stars are on the American Canton, on the canton of the American flag? 50, that's correct. Why are there 50 stars? What? No, Hawaii has a star there too. Yeah, there are 50 states, including Alaska and Hawaii. It used to be 48, and now it's 50. Because the government of America is by the people, for the people, and of the people. That's right. Gee, we're not doing bad. I wonder if they knew that in America. Okay, so what it does is it tells us that it is a democratic country, and that's their way of saying that. The stripes, how many stripes? They're alternating red and white. How many? 13. Why are there 13 stripes on it? The original 13 colonies that formed the country, that's right, it talks of its history and its heritage and its values. In the same way, the Australian flag does that as well. Our flag has a total of 4 crosses on it. Do we know what those crosses are? Can anyone name those crosses that are on our flag? St Andrews, St George, St Patrick's, and the Southern Cross. That's right, they are the 4. And what's the name of the star that's under the Union Jack? The Federation Star. Why does it have 7 points? 6 states and 1 territory makes 7. Yeah. Okay, so that's called our Federation Star. And what that tells us, the Union Jack is representative of the British Commonwealth, but more than that, it is representative of government under God. This flag tells us that as a nation, our highest authority is God. Because every time we meet as a parliament, our parliament begins with prayer. As a nation, we have presented a Bible to the Queen on her coronation. And she swears allegiance to God, the Christian God. In actual fact, she's head of the Church of England. And so, as a nation, we serve God. When I look at those crosses, I think of St George. What do we know about St George? He killed a dragon. He was well, that's the story anyway. He was an incredibly brave man. There's a lot more to the story depending which one. But he is a symbol of bravery. Yeah, the children, we're working on it. Okay, children. Do we know anything about Andrew? St Andrew. He's the patron saint of Scotland. And he has the cross because he died on a triangular cross. He sacrificed his life for Jesus. And St Patrick is reputed to have driven all the snakes out of Ireland. I don't know if that's true or not. But when I think of St Patrick, I know that nothing can stand before my God. Okay, but let's finally get to the Southern Cross. And the Southern Cross is special for us. There's a lot said about Eureka Stockade where it was made famous. But the Southern Cross is much, much more to us as a nation than just a date in history. For every Australian out on the land, what does the Southern Cross at night do? It points due south. You see, in a widespread country like Australia, often we don't know where we're going. You know, you can look, and for as far as you can see, the countryside looks the same, and I've been out there and I've seen it. You know, it's all right here, we can look to the north and we can see the Glasshouse Mountains. And when Michelle and I were, we could look southwest and we used to be able to see the Yanks. And on a clear day, you could actually see Mount Dandenong, and you knew where you were. But in most of Australia, you don't know where you are. And if you haven't got a compass, and you haven't got a road sign, then all you've got is the sun during the day and the Southern Cross at night to give you direction. And as a Christian, I can put all that together in the flag. Because to be a Christian, I have to live my life under God. And when I see the Federation start, I'm reminded that I don't exist by myself, but rather I exist within the fellowship of my church. And finally, when I see the cross, I'm reminded that Jesus gives me direction in life. Okay, Trinette, you can have it. Okay. I was going to use that a bit closer to the end, but okay. On the 13th of May, in the year 1787, 11 ships set sail from England. They were at sea for over 7 months. It was said at the time that this was the biggest single overseas migration that the world had ever seen. Nearly 1,400 people crowded on 11 ships that were about 30 foot wide and about 100 foot long. Let's put that into perspective. 30 foot wide would be roughly the width of this building. 100 foot long, well, this building would be, how long would this building be? About 50 foot? Yeah, give or take a few feet. So maybe twice as long as this building. Okay. So how would you like to add another 50 people in, spend 7 months together for bathing, going to the toilet, cooking, eating, storing all our supplies? That was what it was like for the first settlers in Australia. I can't begin to imagine that. Below deck, above deck, 100 foot, 50 foot, over 100 of us, crowded, 11 ships. On the journey, 69 people perished. We're told that is an amazingly low number for what they faced. On the second fleet, the mortality rate was more than 4 times higher. In the diary of one of the ship's captains, it was written, had very strong gales of wind, with very heavy seas running, which kept our vessel almost constantly under water, and renders the situation of everyone on board truly uncomfortable. I cannot imagine what it must have been like for those people. Finally, all 11 ships, within 20 minutes of each other, from the very first to the very last, sailed in to Sydney Harbour. What an incredible journey, what an incredible story. The minister, the Reverend Richard Johnson, who was recommended by none other than William Wilberforce and John Newton, gathered the first settlers of Australia on the 3rd of February, the very first Sunday. And his text for that came from Psalm 116, verse 12. We don't know his sermon, it's not recorded for us. All we know is the text he used. What shall I give to the Lord for all his benefits to me? That they were grateful, that they arrived. 2 days after the French, by the way, did you know that? 2 days after the French and La Perouse, Admiral La Perouse, had brought his little fleet into Botany Bay, and and landed on the 24th of January. We really have Australia Day on the 24th of January. I'm glad we don't, because I cannot speak French. But the French were wanting to come here. But because Captain Cook had been here, La Perouse, Admiral La Perouse, ceded to the British claim, took his ships out of Sydney Harbour. Though better provisioned than the British, he headed north and was never seen again. Australia was founded with an evangelical heritage. Most people don't tell you this, but during the 19th century, the 18th and 19th century, there had been a great evangelical awakening in England, and people had turned to God greatly. And the government at that time was comprised of many, many godly men. They were the fruit, the heritage of the preaching of the Wesleys, Whitfields, and others who proclaimed righteousness through faith in Christ. And there were many committed Christians amongst our first Australians. Names like Hunter, from which we get the Hunter Valley, Macquarie, Governor Macquarie, Brisbane. Heard that name before, haven't you? What about Latrobe, Arthur? All these men were godly, dedicated Christians. Governor Macquarie was actually active in Bible Society, Sunday schools, and the proclamation of the Lordship of Christ. Our early explorers, many of them were godly men. Men like Sturt, who opened up the inland, Leichhardt, who explored much of the east coast. Later on, we would see the blessings of even more. Reverend John Flint, famous for the Royal Flying Doctor Service. Manufacturing, Ridley, who brought in a machine that would strip the wheat. Mackay, who would create the combine harvester. In fact, people from all walks of life. And they came, they lived, and they exempted Jesus Christ in our nation. The fabric of the gospel is woven in to our character, just as it is woven in to our flag. But let's not talk about the Macquaries and the Latrobes and the Mackays and the Ridleys. Let's not talk about the outstanding people on the pages of our history, of which there are many. Let's talk about the ones who are unnamed. It is said that at the time of Federation, on any given Sunday, 90% of the population were in church praising God. For every 10 Australians, 9 were there proclaiming Jesus Christ as Lord. Maybe the day of the great Southland of the Holy Spirit has come and passed. Mateship, which we attribute to the Aussie spirit, I believe, is the common outworking of Christian fellowship. And it is a part of our heritage. And I fear that we are quickly losing that as we go from a nation that once said we've got to look out for one another to becoming a nation that looks out for ourselves. We have gone from a nation that says, come on mate, let me give you a hand, to a nation that says, what's in it for me? That we have gone from a nation that understood the words of Jesus to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul, and to love your neighbour as yourself, to becoming a nation that loves only yourself. We have become a nation complacent in our heritage, forgetful of our ancestry. Who, like those in the book of Hebrews, we could go on for day after day telling stories of faithfulness, just as the writer to Hebrews could say, I could tell you about Samson, I could tell you about Gideon, I could tell you about David, I could tell you about this one, I could tell you about that one. Well, I could stand here and I could tell you all about Macquarie. I could tell you all about Latrobe. I could tell you all about Simpson and his donkey on the trails of Gallipoli. I could tell you story after story after story of godly men and women that have created the fabric and nature of this country in which we live. But I despair because I wonder what stories will be told by tomorrow. I wonder what will happen when we write God out of our nation. I wonder what will happen when we replace our flag with one that does not represent or recognise the sovereignty of God, that does not include the government of a people committed to God, and a flag that does not point towards a Christ who gives us direction. We have a heritage. We have received a rich heritage. A heritage that went out in mission service. A heritage that went out to the wildest parts of the earth and brought peace, and brought hope, and brought goodwill. And today, we are at risk of losing our heritage. I want to celebrate being an Australian. On the 17th of May, 1972, at 8 o'clock in the morning, as a 17-year-old, I stood with a Bible in my hand, a Bible that I had never opened. And I raised my hand and I pledged allegiance as a newly recruited soldier. And I swore that I would serve God, that I would serve the Queen, and that I would serve this nation. I have taken that oath seriously. 3 years later, I was discharged. A little over 3 years later, I was discharged from the army. But I can never be discharged from that day. I am proud to be Australian. I am proud because Australian means that I live under God and my life points to Christ. And that is the heritage